Good morning, lovely people of the world. If you're just joining Dad with a phone, we're going to be live here in just a moment with the court appearance. God willing, all the YouTube servers come together and the sheriff gets his act together and we get to. They reported yesterday that this was going to be a closed court hearing for Chad Daybell, but in fact, they would be live streaming to YouTube. Now, this is the new world we live in. I've been talking about this for 2 years now, about how the world is going to change when it comes to these cases, and they are literally going to be told on YouTube. And this one seems to be what they're headed for in this deal. So it'll be one of those that we will, I guess, all get to stream live on YouTube and watch live on YouTube. I thank you for joining the conversation over here at Dad with a Phone. If you're new, make sure to hit like and subscribe. On top of that, my page is run a little different. You might get run out of here if you're belligerent, if you start cussing, if you start going after someone in the chat. You may get blocked and never come back. And so be adults. I mean, it really is that simple. And so if you want to yell and scream at me, you'll probably for sure get blocked because I just don't let that negativity in my life. But when you're talking about these cases, I know that they are super sensitive and there are family members involved. And so sometimes we get family in and out of chats as we're describing and discussing these cases. So just be mindful of that. Other than that, we'll see what happens to the old Chad today. I can tell you this much, that we have confirmed, and whether or not you believe me or not, I have confirmed that they have found the two children, and they have found JJ and Tylee, and it is it's a sad day. On the other side, it is a day that we know that they're going to begin to seek justice for this. It is under my understanding, again, believe me or not, it doesn't matter to me. The sources that I've been speaking with that are in Idaho have confirmed that Lori Vallow is the one who kind of broke this case wide open, to be honest with you. And I'm not trying to defend her. I think she is very much involved in this case. But it's going to be interesting as this case goes forward. I believe that they're going to end up. Why am I out of focus? I believe they're going to end up giving her some sort of reduced sentence. I'm trying to see why I'm out of focus here, folks. Nothing I can do there. Oh, we're back in focus now. So hopefully we will have this up as soon as they start broadcasting. So we're watching, all the sheriff's YouTubes and stuff. As soon as they start, we'll kick this thing off. Fremont County Sheriff. Yeah, nothing yet. About 3 minutes till. I would assume they are live. So we will pull this up now, and we will pull in this live stream that looks like they are showing some outside footage right now off of channel 7. Let me see if there's any other live streams. If you have a live stream that you're watching and they have posted it, let me know, because I will pull that one in. I'm not any quicker than most. Yeah, I'm not seeing them there. Let's go to their YouTube channel and see if we can find them. Fox 13 is live, they say. Which is Utah channel. I just want to see if they're live in the courtroom. Looks like they're live outside the courtroom. I don't see them, but let's see. Yeah, they're in front of the courthouse live. But we'll see who pops up first. Let's see what this boy's saying here.
This morning. That's because of those so far unidentified.
So they're going to cut to
found in his backyard
a couple of news stories.
Experts we've spoken to say they can tell just by looking at the aerial video, the pictures from yesterday. It seems like investigators knew exactly where to look.
Yep, they sure did. Because Lori Vallow told them.
Since JJ and Tylee went missing, someone may have seen him digging in his own backyard. It could have been something police found on his computers when they served their first search warrant at his house last January. Could have been the result of a cadaver dog that told police where to dig, or somebody, maybe even Lori Vallow, could have decided to talk. Either way, this is a case that everyone in this small town of Rexburg has been following. Even for the people who never knew Chad Daybell, following this case has become a part of their daily life, and now they feel like this brings the case one step closer to closure.
And putting out signs, posting T-shirts on telephone poles. I held a vigil for JJ. Just a concerned citizen, just want answers. Hopefully the truth comes out, what happened to the kids, and that the family can feel peace with the outcome.
So far, we do not know what charges Chad Daybell will face this morning, or if his wife's charges will be increased in Madison County. When we asked
if you were asking me, I would say that his charges are going to go up. Her charges are not going to go up. If you're asking me, but that's just me. That's all I'm telling you. They haven't started the press conference yet. They're running a little bit behind, but that's to be expected from the cops. You know, can't be. These cops aren't ever on time. I like this one though. This is a little shot from outside of Idaho, Rexburg, Idaho. Idaho is a lot like Colorado in a sense that the Rocky Mountains kind of tap the market there in Idaho a little bit. They've got some really pretty stuff, so it'll be interesting. I believe that Lori Vallow 100% gave up the kids' location. I believe she did this because she is now facing her court dates, not just bail hearings and bond hearings. And so right now, I'm not seeing any live coverage from inside the courtroom just yet, but we will cut to it as soon as it pops open. We got to trust these news channels because I don't live there. If I lived there, I'd be there. I do have some people on the hook maybe for a show later today with some local guys that live in the area that are going to be at the court. So should be all these advertisements. I figured this would be coming directly from the sheriff's departments. From the sheriff's department's page, but it looks like they are going to be broadcasting it live from someone else. So Channel 7's up right now. We're going to continue to keep things live. If I can find a live stream from within inside the sheriff's department, we'll bring that up. But right now, we are not seeing that from anywhere. And the sheriff was pretty clear that they were going to be broadcasting live from their YouTube channel, but they're not. That is not the case right now. Yeah. I like how they got that live stream outside. Much nice messages from folks. It'll be interesting to see if they actually broadcast live. There are some reports.
Okay, so yesterday you got there in the afternoon to Rexburg, and you, as that search was going on, there were roads blocked off for, I think you said, a mile or two all around the search scene. Obviously, this is a very sensitive situation. Were they able to tell you why it was blocked off in such a wide area?
They didn't go into specifics. That's one of those things that, police yesterday weren't taking a lot of questions. They were being pretty tight-lipped with a lot of things. But again, a couple of miles in each direction from his house. And keep in mind, we are here in Fremont County. It's very rural roads, a lot of houses out there, but very spread out. And so based on where we were, we drove all the way around trying to find a road that would get us as
Okay,
close
I'm
as
sorry,
possible,
Missy.
trying
I'm
to get a view of
gonna
the
have to
house
cut
and
you off
They're
right
gonna-
there because the hearing is actually starting now. I know you want to listen in as well, so let's also listen in Chad Daybell's initial court appearance.
Your Honor, I'm going to mute my mic and turn off my camera, but I'm not leaving the meeting. I'm right here.
Judge, we're going to do the same as well.
All right, we're only going to be about a minute and a half, and then I'll start.
As you heard there, Judge Farron Edens was giving the prosecution and
All right,
the
we're going to
defense
call it the case.
about a minute and a half, and that went pretty quickly. Let's listen in.
One moment.
More evidence of the times that we are living in right now. So many things happening by Zoom and teleconferencing. And as you see, the judge and a clerk are the only ones in the Fremont County courtroom right now. The prosecutor, Rob Wood, up there in the upper right-hand corner, is remotely patching into this hearing, as well as Chad Daybell there in the left in the prison outfit, or the jail outfit, I should say, and his attorney, John Pryor, waiting for this to get started as the judge sets things in place. No
We're going to go on the
reporters, no
record. Good
public
morning
allowed in
here
the courtroom either.
in Fremont County, Idaho. This is the case of CR 2220-755, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. This matter is being held at the Fremont County courtroom via Zoom remotely. Mr. Daybell, the defendant, appears with his counsel. Mr. Pryor at the jail here in Fremont County. Mr. Wood appears remotely from his office. There is the clerk here, there's a court reporter, and there is some IT support that is also on the line. This is the date and time set for an initial appearance. The reason we're holding this hearing remotely via Zoom is due to a order that's been issued by the Supreme Court. In that order, it designates that whenever plausible, hearings are to be held remotely in order to effectuate safety of society and effectuate safety of all employees in the courtroom. In future proceedings, it will be an issue that's addressed case by case and hearing by hearing. That order is dated April 22nd, 2020, and has been issued by the Idaho Supreme Court. Mr. Daybell, do you read, speak, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Mr. Daybell, can you hear me okay today?
Yes.
Mr. Daybell, it appears that you have hired private counsel, Mr. John Pryor, is that correct?
Yes.
And you'd like to retain him. Mr. Pryor, has there been a formal notice of appearance that has been entered?
Judge, I will get that filed within short period of time.
All right, but Mr. Daybell, Mr. Pryor is your attorney for this hearing, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Daybell, have you seen a notification of rights form that was provided to your counsel prior to the hearing here today?
Yes.
Do you understand all of your legal rights?
Yes.
Mr. Daybell, in addition to the rights that were contained in that notification of rights form that was given to you, I'm going to advise you of additional rights under Idaho Criminal Rule 5. Number one, you have the right to be at the initial appearance or appear via Zoom remotely like you are today. You don't need to make any statements today. You have the right to know what charges are being brought against you. You have the right to bail. You have the right to counsel. And you have all of the other rights that have been presented to you in that notification of rights. Do you have any questions about your rights, Mr. Daybell? I didn't hear your answer.
No. He does not.
You understand your legal rights, is that correct?
I do.
All right. Mr. Daybell, did you receive a copy of the warrant of arrest as well as the criminal complaint that has been filed here in Fremont County in this case?
Yes.
Mr. Daybell, have you had a chance to review that criminal complaint as well as the arrest warrant with your counsel?
Yes.
Mr. Pryor, I can read the criminal complaint in its entirety, or I can summarize it for you.
Judge, we'll waive actually formal reading of the criminal complaint at this time, and I've discussed that matter with Mr. Daybell, and we're ready to proceed forward without either a summary or a formal reading at this point.
All right. The court is going to summarize briefly what the charges are, so that that's on the record, and then we'll address the other issues we need to address. Let me get one more thing out of the way, Mr. Pryor. Ultimately, the Supreme Court order has ordered these hearings be held remotely, but it's my understanding your client is willing to waive his right to be here in court in person. Is that correct?
It is, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Daybell, is that also correct?
Yes.
With regards to the criminal complaint, it was filed dated June 10th, 2020. There are 2 counts in the criminal complaint. The first count is destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence, a felony, a violation of Idaho Code 182603. The maximum punishment for that charge is up to 5 years in the state penitentiary and or up to a $10,000 fine. The allegation is that the defendant, Chad Guy Daybell, on or between the 22nd day of September 2019 and the 9th day of June 2020 in the county of Fremont, state of Idaho, did willfully conceal and or aid and abet another to willfully conceal human remains, knowing that said human remains were about to be produced used and or discovered as evidence in a felony proceeding. Inquiry and or investigation authorized by law with the intent to prevent it from being so produced, used, and or discovered. Count 2 is also the same charge, destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence, a felony. It's punishable by up to 5 years in the state penitentiary and or up to a $10,000 fine. It alleges that the defendant, Chad Guy Daybell, on or between the 8th day of September 2019 and the 9th day of June 2020 in the county of Fremont, state of Idaho, did willfully destroy, alter, and or conceal human remains, and or did aid and abet another to willfully destroy, alter, and or conceal human remains, knowing that said human remains were about to be produced, used, and or discovered as evidence in a felony proceeding. Inquiry and or investigation authorized by law with the intent to prevent it from being so produced, used, and or discovered. Mr. Daybell, do you understand the allegations on both counts that have been brought against you?
I do.
Mr. Daybell, do you also understand the maximum penalties on each of those counts?
Yes.
Mr. Daybell, do you understand that those maximum penalties could run consecutively, one after the other, or they could run concurrently? Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. We've gone through the criminal complaint. We've gone through each count. I've advised the defendant of his right. We've gone through that form. Let's discuss the next hearing that's going to be set. Mr. Pryor and Mr. Wood, that next hearing would be a preliminary hearing or a probable cause hearing. The defendant has a right to have that within 14 days if he's incarcerated. It's my understanding that based upon previous conversations that there'll be a waiver of that speedy preliminary hearing. Is that correct, Mr. Pryor?
It is, Your Honor. I've had that discussion with Mr. Daybell. In addition, I've had that discussion with Fremont County prosecuting attorney, and at this point, we'll waive the time.
Mr. Wood, is that correct as far as the stipulation?
Yes, the state's fine with that, Your Honor.
Mr. Pryor, the court's going to grant that waiver and acknowledge that it's knowingly and voluntarily made, but I will need a written waiver of speedy preliminary hearing so that can be in the file for the record. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor. I'll do that. Thank you.
All right. With regards to a preliminary hearing, let's first talk about the logistics of that. Mr. Wood, how long do you foresee it taking to accomplish a preliminary hearing in the future?
No longer than a day.
Okay. 1 day. Mr. Pryor, do you concur with that?
Judge, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage, but for practical purposes, I think a day would be appropriate.
All right, we'll set this for 1 day. Mr. Wood and Mr. Pryor, do you have a timeline that you'd like to look at as far as scheduling that today?
Judge, my preference would be within 4 to 6 weeks.
Mr. Wood?
That's fine. We do have a preliminary hearing on July 9th and 10th in the Lori Vallow case. And so if we are going to push it out that far, I'd ask that this prelim be at least the week of the July 16th.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town the week of July 16th, and I won't be back for some time. So if we need to have it in July, it probably needs to be towards the beginning of July or into June. Otherwise, it's going to have to be the last week of July. Mr. Pryor, does that work with your schedule?
Judge, the latter part of June and the first week of July, the 1st and the 2nd of July would be ideal for me if that's available to the court and to Mr. Wood.
We can
Mr.
make
Wood?
that work.
All right, let's look at dates then. I'm looking at the calendar. The end of June, it looks like those Monday is the 29th, and then Tuesday is the 30th, and then Wednesday is July 1st, Thursday, July 2nd. Which of those days do both of you prefer?
I think the 2nd would be best for the state.
Mr. Pryor, does that work for you?
Judge, I believe the 2nd falls on a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So I would like to see if we could do the first, and if necessary, we can have the second available in the event this thing runs a little longer, Your Honor.
Okay, so the second is a Thursday, Mr. Pryor, but I appreciate that you would like to have extra time if it does go over. So if we set it for the first, Mr. Wood, can we do that? And then if it spills over into the second, we'll make sure that date's available.
That'd be fine.
Okay. We'll set that then July 1st and July 2nd for the preliminary hearing or the probable cause hearing. Lastly, the court has issued the arrest warrant. The court designated that it would address bond and or bail at the hearing set today. And so I'd like to hear argument from both parties regarding bail. So why don't I hear from the state first, and then I'll hear from the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state is requesting that bail be set at $1 million. While we recognize that felony concealing of evidence only has a maximum sentence of 5 years per charge, I think the background and context of this case necessitates a higher bail. One of the primary reasons we are asking that bail be set in that amount is that the evidence that has been concealed in this case, it's not simply a document, drugs, a gun. These are human remains. And we can, although those remains have not yet been positively identified, we are aware that those remains are the remains of children, which we believe is an aggravating factor. We have asked that the probable cause affidavit be sealed, but I would ask the court to take note of paragraphs 39 and 40 and the manner of the concealment of one of those bodies, which the state finds to be particularly egregious, both an aggravating factor and bears on character as Rule 40 as Rule 46 allows us to look at. Your Honor, we understand that the possible sentence on this case is not that long, but knowing what the subject matter is, we find it extremely serious. And we would also note that because of what has been found on Mr. Daybell's property, should he bail out, he has strong incentive to flee. Clearly, this is the beginning now of an investigation into the deaths of children who are found on his property, and so that provides a strong incentive to flee, and we would ask that the bail reflect that. Whatever the court sets as bail, we would ask that the conditions be set that should he bond out, that he be required to wear an ankle monitor, and that his movement be restricted to Madison and Fremont counties.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Mr. Pryor, I'll hear from you next.
And Judge, just for purposes of the record, my understanding is the court's allowing us to address this issue of bond, but that in no way limits us in the future to file a further motion for bond if that's necessary. And I believe that's the court's understanding, Mr. Wood's understanding as well, is it not, Judge?
Let me make that clear for the record. Because of the nature of timing and such, generally speaking, the court sets a bail based upon a probable cause affidavit, and then if a motion needs to be filed after, it can be filed. I did not set a bail because, frankly, it was timing. And so, correct, Mr. Pryor, I'm going to give you complete ability to file a renewed motion or a first motion to deal with bail. I guess de novo is how you could look at that. And so I'm going to set bail today. When you file your motion, the court will definitely give you a hearing for that, and we'll take it and make a decision based upon that.
Thank you, Your Honor. But in regards to argument, Your Honor, I would point out that the charges are, as Ms. Wood pointed out, carry a maximum of 5 years. Mr. Daybell is not charged with anything more serious. And quite honestly, for the prosecuting attorney to assume that in the future he may or may not do that, and that we should increase the bail with the idea that in the future there may be something else coming down the pipe is just clearly contrary to what the purpose of bail is. Bail is to assure that Mr. Daybell shows up to court. Bail is to assure that he's not a flight risk, and there's nothing, in, as far as I'm concerned, in his history that indicates that he's going to flee the jurisdiction. I would refer the court to the affidavit on number 26, and it talks about the last time that they saw the kids. If Mr. Wood's intention is to pursue further charges, my belief is that he would have pursued those. And quite honestly, at this point, the court needs to take consideration of what the current charges are and whether or not Mr. Daybell will show up to court. Mr. Daybell has taken the initiative to hire private counsel. He has shown up to the proceeding today. Obviously, he's in custody. But Judge, when the police showed up at his house last night, Mr. Daybell didn't flee. Mr. Daybell didn't abscond. Mr. Daybell didn't run. Mr. Daybell's intention was, through his counsel, to turn himself into the court if that was something that was going to happen and address these issues. He has every intention of addressing these issues. He has significant family in the community. He has kids that live here. He owns property here. And quite honestly, I disagree with Mr. Wood. Mr. Daybell has every intention of staying in the community and every motivation to stay in the community and address these charges. So at this point, Judge, I would ask the court to put the bail at an amount that's appropriate for a 5-year felony sentence. I understand that there's been a significant amount of publicity with this, but publicity is not a reason to raise the bail to an extraordinary amount. And I would suggest that Mr. Wood's suggestion that a $1 million bail is okay, it's not okay, Judge. A $1 million bail is not okay for a 5-year felony sentence. And if in the future Mr. Wood decides to pursue other charges, I'm sure we'll address this again. But at this point, Your Honor, I think it's important for the court to set a bail at an appropriate amount based on the 2 felony 5-year sentences. I would ask the court for $50,000 on each count for a total of $100,000, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. The court has listened carefully to the argument of both parties. The court has reviewed Idaho Criminal Rule 46, specifically the factors contained in Idaho Criminal Rule 46 under subsection C. There are 10 different factors that the court has looked at. The court has also looked carefully at Idaho Code 192904 and the factors that are designed therein. In looking at the factors in 192904, there are 4 specifically that the legislators have set forth. Number 1, ensuring the appearance of the defendant. Number 2, ensuring the integrity of the court process, including the right of the defendant to bail as constitutionally provided. Ensuring the protection of victims and witnesses. And number 4, ensuring public safety. The court is cognizant that there is an absolute constitutional right to bail provided in both the Idaho Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. The court has taken all of those factors into account, and based upon those factors and the charge, the court is going to set bail in the amount of $1 million. The court notes that the charge is destruction, alteration, and concealment of evidence as pertained in the criminal complaint. I've taken all those factors into account. Specifically, the factor in Rule 46C, subsection 6, which designates I'm to take into account the nature of the current charge and any mitigating or aggravating factors that may bear on the likelihood of conviction and the possible penalty. The underlying charge here is destruction, alteration, and concealment of evidence, and the allegation is that the evidence was human remains of 2 different people. That's an aggravating fact, and the court has taken that into account. If bail is posted, Mr. Pryor, I'm also going to make conditions of bail. Those conditions will be as follows. Number 1, I'm going to order that a waiver of extradition be provided to the Fremont County Office of the Sheriff. The prosecutor must approve the waiver of extradition by his signature on the waiver of extradition. A copy of that waiver must be filed with the court. Number 2, I'm going to order that the defendant shall reside within the boundaries of Bonneville, Jefferson, Madison, and Fremont counties in the state of Idaho. The defendant shall not leave these counties for any reason. Number 3, the defendant shall provide the court with his current address and shall not change his address without notifying the court. Number 4, the defendant shall keep in regular contact with his attorney. Number 5, the defendant shall appear for all court appearances. Number 6, the defendant shall obey all laws of the state of Idaho and the United States of America. Number 7, the defendant will sign up for pretrial services and check in with pretrial services here in Fremont County on a weekly basis, as directed. The defendant shall have absolutely no contact with the victims' families and or any of the state's witnesses in this case. Contact shall include, but be not limited to, verbal contact, written contact, visual contact, text messaging contact, email or internet contact, and or telephonic contact. Such contact shall also include contact through third parties. Number 9, the defendant must wear an ankle monitor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He must have the ankle monitor in place before he is released from the Fremont County Jail. Any violations of the geographical limitation imposed herein must be reported immediately to the Fremont County Sheriff's Office and the court. If the defendant is notified that under the order to wear the ankle monitor, intentionally leaving the area of restriction, except for the purpose of obtaining emergency medical care, may be prosecuted as a crime of escape and subject the defendant to penalties under Idaho Code. If the defendant fails to comply with all of these terms, the court may, pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule 46I and Idaho Code Section 2919, revoke the defendant's release and eligibility for posting of bail. Mr. Daybell, Mr. Pryor, do both of you understand what bail has been set at, as well as any conditions that must be met in order for that bail to be set?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Mr. Wood, any questions?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we'll be in recess for today, pending that preliminary hearing. There will be a few things that need to be worked out, and we're going to go off the record for now, and I'll see everybody back here at the beginning of July. Council will have to communicate regularly, both with the court and with each other, about how this hearing is going to be held, whether it's going to be held remotely or whether it's going to be held in person. Mr. Wood or Mr. Pryor, do either of you wish to address that issue today?
Not today, Judge.
No, and I can, Mr. Pryor and I can visit and talk about that and see if we can come to an arrangement before we address that issue with the court.
All right, I will just state for the record that the court will need to make findings if we're going to do it live in person, and we'll address that at a future hearing on whether or not that's going to take place. With that, we'll be in recess. Thanks, everybody, for appearing.
Judge Farron Edens wrapping up today's initial appearance.
And we're done. There you go. The judge wrapped up the first appearance of Chad Daybell. What we found out is basically they set the bond for the amount that the prosecuting attorneys asked, which was $1 million, which, to put this in perspective, is outrageous, right, for the charges that he has been charged with. But the judge is looking at all the aggravating factors, which means more charges are coming down the pipe. People, calm down. He's not getting out of jail anytime soon, and it appears Lori Vallow is not getting out of jail anytime soon. She's got a first appearance. Now, here's the deal. I believe without a doubt Lori Vallow pointed them directly to where the evidence was. I believe Lori is very much involved in this murder of these children. But I also believe Chad Daybell is very much involved in the murder of these children. They are co-conspirators. And when you have a case like this where there has to be a story told, but the story doesn't have to, the story's easy to tell if they have the bodies, because they can tell you how they died. They will be able to, they don't have to fill out exactly how it happened. And that's why he's only been charged with the tampering and the destruction of evidence. People are asking me, it sounds like the bodies were moved there. Of course the bodies were moved there. They probably did not kill the kids on that property. The bodies were ultimately moved and buried there. And frankly, Chad Daybell has dug a lot of graves, not only in the surrounding of his people that have died around him in the last few years, but this used to be a former profession of his. So, you know, to dig a grave is not an easy thing to do. But if you're a professional grave digger, so the question will be, how much did Lori tell them to get to that? Did she say, hey, you're going to find bodies? Or did she say you're going to find evidence? See, because the affidavit and the probable cause affidavit gave them the right to search based on the fact that they believed he had tampered or destroyed evidence, and they had very specific locations they were targeting. They didn't dig up the whole backyard, folks. They dug very specific spots. Now, two things that could have happened. One, I know for a fact they had a canine dog out there, but I also know that they had a canine dog prior to this investigation. So the question will be, if they had a general area and used the canine dog to target the direct areas that they dug up, very probable, especially with a good canine, especially with a good cadaver dog. I've had the opportunity to work with some cadaver dogs, and I saw a cadaver dog mark a body 20 feet under ice. And what I mean by that, it was in an avalanche field. They were going. I worked on a documentary where they were recovering a young woman who had died in an avalanche, and they helicoptered in a cadaver dog. This was on the south side of Little Bear Peak in an avalanche field, and the cadaver dog marked the body 20 feet deep under ice. They weren't able to recover the body till months later in the spring, but the body was exactly where the cadaver dog had marked. And so a well-trained dog could easily have marked out where they dug up. The fact, here's the fact though, that I think that they had prior knowledge of exactly where they were digging, is because they did it that quickly. They did it, within hours, they were having a press conference. And although dogs are amazing, I don't think it would have happened that quickly had they had to mark those spots with a dog. I believe they had pretty good idea and intention in where they were going to search. And there you go. So with that, I'm 98.9% sure Lori Vallow targeted those spots. Now, whether she targeted them with the intention of saying, hey, I know there's evidence on his property. If you go out the back door and head out a few feet, I know he's buried stuff out there. Look by the fire pit. He just put that fire pit in. If, in fact, it didn't come from Lori Vallow, then over the next few days, Chad is either going to do a lot of talking or Lori's going to do a lot of talking. And so if in fact it came from let's say it came from a neighbor, right? Neighbor said, hey, he just put that fire pit in. Guys should go check out there. Boom, they go check out there. I don't think that's what happened. But if in fact they haven't ratted on each other, somebody's going to rat. Somebody's going to squirm. Somebody's going to say something, because they've been there for a minute. He didn't bury those bodies from the time she got arrested in Hawaii. No chance in the world did he move those bodies to that location during his time that he's been out, and Lord, those bodies have been there since they were in Hawaii. And so I don't believe that, because you would have to be ape nuts. Now he's ape nuts, but you'd have to be real ape nuts to think that you're moving around with people aren't watching you. Dude, there are sleuthers that are watching you every moment, Chad, and you think you're going to move around and bury some bodies. I don't believe so. I believe Chad Daybell has been in the limelight from the beginning, and I think those bodies have been on that property from whenever they were murdered and moved there before they went. I think it probably happened around the time they were moving shit into the storage unit. At some point after when they started moving stuff into the storage unit, the babies had been buried. And so that's just my opinion. I can't prove that to you. So maybe the brother put him there. Absolutely. There's no doubt that maybe the brother, boom, put those bodies in that backyard. But it is, in my opinion, Lori Vallow pointed him to those bodies. So I think we're going to see Lori Vallow slowly start to slip through the cracks, because I believe she's been named a state endorsed witness against Chad Daybell. Now the question will be, does Chad Daybell stand up and start telling a different story? Because now they're both going to have to talk, because they're both going to be facing some charges. Hey, we'll catch up with you guys later. I have a guest I'm trying to hunt down right now, and maybe we'll have a full podcast later this afternoon or tomorrow. But other than that, thanks for watching Dad with a Phone. You guys can find me at all the links below. We'll see you guys on the other.